Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome in, everyone, to episode 79 of Instigate Success, building an ABA franchise, the official podcast of the Hoosier State Instigators. Welcome in, everyone. You're watching from Twitch or over on the Patreon or YouTube. We are live again every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, for the next hour or so. So thank you for joining us. And again, shout out to all of our Patreon members, over 125. I think we're up to 144 now, if my memory is correct. So hopefully we can hit that 150 mark before the end of season 2. But thank you to everyone who is a supporter and everyone who has been tuning in weekly for the program. This week, we'll go over the past weekend's game. It was that rescheduled game that we had against the Maysville Miners, and then we'll take a look at the games coming up this weekend. This weekend is going to be our last stretch of the regular season, our final 2 games on the regular season. Actually, I think I got that right here. So the game this past weekend against the Miners, and then we got the game on Saturday against the Kings, and then Sunday against the Aces. 2 road games to finish out the regular season, season 2 for the Instigators in the ABA. And then we'll take a look at the playoffs, and because we're pretty much set as far as that goes, we'll be able to look at the matchups, at least within our division, and see how things around the league are shaking out. But now that we've just got the 1 weekend left, at least for us, and pretty much around the division, it's a little bit more of a solid playoff picture, so we have a better idea of where things will fall when the season does end. But we had that game last Sunday at the Best Choice Fieldhouse in Fishers, Indiana, our home venue for season 2. It was our last scheduled home game of the season. Hopefully we'll have at least, well, there's a possibility to have a game in the play-ins at the home venue, so we might have that. But last scheduled home game to this point for the Instigators this past Sunday. A little bit different too, because most of our other home games have been Saturday nights at 7:30. This one was on a Sunday night though instead. So a little bit different, but it was our final time at Best Choice Fieldhouse. Great venue that we've been able to be with for this second season. Hopefully we can continue to have games there in the future as well. But a great venue that we've had for this second season, and that is I guess a bittersweet way to end the home games for the Instigators, though. So that final score was 118-110. This is over from the Miners page. Miners walk away with the victory. So not able to wrap up the home game finale. We started off the season with a win, but we were not able to close out the season at home with a win, unfortunately. So that did bring the Instigators back below 500 again. Something we've been teetering right around that 500 mark throughout the season, but that does bring the Instigators back down just under 500. I believe that puts us at 7-8 now. And that leaves us up for this weekend, which is going to, we've got 2 more games. So leaves it for the opportunity to either finish with a winning record or a losing record. There's no possibility as far as a 500 record because of the number of games we'll wind up having played. Is going to be an odd number of games when it comes to the record. So if we win out this weekend, we have the opportunity to have a winning record for the first time in franchise history. And I think regardless of what happens we should have more wins than last season. At least I believe so off the top of my head. But that is where we stand. So we are currently 7-8. Could finish as high as 9-8, or it could be as low as 7-10. Yeah, so that's what we got coming up this weekend. That game against the Miners, we have not had a time had a chance yet to do that rebroadcast stream. So we're still working on getting that up here in the next week or so. And then obviously we'll have the two from this weekend coming up to film as well. So if you have been looking for that, we just haven't gotten the chance yet to record that and get that posted. So it is still on the way, but we will get that out eventually. And let's jump over, take a look at the stats for that game. And I don't think the stats came all the way through as far as what I've seen on the website portal where we have all of the stats for the game. So we'll share what we do have, or at least have access to. So we got the game here. You see there the 118, 110. Looks like the quarters didn't get reported there for us, but the Miners at least started off the game very hot, 40 points in that first quarter. Slowed down a little there in the second, but pretty steady there in the third and fourth quarters. But that brings the Miners, I believe, to 4-6, even though I think they might be 5-6, because I think they are on a 4-game win streak, and I remember they had the victory against the Lions early in the season. Yeah, I don't think the record got applied properly to this matchup because we're still 7-7 on there as well. But taking a look down here, we see the Miners, and it looks for the scoring. That's pretty much the only thing that did get reported is points. The other stats did not carry over on here, but it looks like the Miners were led by Courtney Ware with 42 points. That's very impressive. And 10 of those were 3-point shots. 10 3-point shots made. So let's take a look over here and see stats for Courtney Ware, and it looks like that's actually his highest scoring game on the season. Definitely by far the most 3-pointers in a game for Ware. But that is an impressive outing there for the leading scorer on the Miners. Definitely when we get a chance to do that rebroadcast, I'm sure we'll have some tape to point out on Ware in that matchup with 42 points. Miners also have a few guys with double digits: 21 points for Michael Laster, 19 points for Brandon Doss. We've got 3 more guys there in double digits: 12, 11, and 11 for number 23. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that because I'm sure I will mispronounce that. And then we got Ray and Smith as well with double-digit points. Taking a look at the Instigators, our leading scorer this past week was Malcolm Martin with 17, or with 18. Just behind him with 17 was Krishawn Hopkins. A few other guys in double digits. LB back in action. Tyler Bibbs, Cash Bell, and Miro all in double digits as well. Again, the stats didn't get transferred, so that's all we have to go by is just the points. And it looks like possibly another addition for the Instigators. I'll have to see who exactly that is. unless his name is just DK or KD. But I'm pretty sure we did not trade for Kevin Durant, as far as I know. So I think that is supposed to be DK. Um, but I'll have to see exactly who that is. I'm not familiar with that. But that was the matchup here. Um, but like I said, we'll be filming the rebroadcast here upcoming throughout this week. And when we get that, we'll get that posted. We'll also be filming the other two matchups that we got remaining for the rest of the season and get that over and upload that on our YouTube channel. So let's take a look at the power rankings in the league. So let's jump over there. Power rankings in the ABA following this weekend's games. In The Chicago Fury still at the top, undefeated on the season, still your number one team. And again, they're going to be the favorite in the league as far as that goes until somebody is able to knock them off from that top spot. But they are still on an impressive run, have not lost a game in it's got to be close to like 2 years now. So very, very impressive for the Chicago Fury. The team that has locked up the number one seed in our division, the Central Region Black Division. Another undefeated team still, though, is the Silicon Valley Panthers at 15-0. Then we got a few teams there with one or two losses, and then we've got looks like it still shows the Austin Bats undefeated there too as well. The number 11 team at 13-0. But when we take a look at the overall standings in the league, I'll just double check that, make sure they still are undefeated. Because if they are, I'm kind of surprised they would fall down to number 11, be outside the top 10 there. Um, but we will see. We've got some teams that we have faced off against here on the rankings. The Indiana Lions, who we secured a victory against just a few weeks ago, at number 12 with a 17-4 record. Nashville Aces at 14, a team that we will be facing on Sunday. So we've got a chance to have another top ranked team victory against another top-ranked team this season. We were able to defeat the Aces earlier this season when they were inside of the top 10 rankings. So definitely a team we have familiarity with and one we know that we are capable of defeating. The other team we play will be the Ohio Kings this weekend. Not on the list there, but a very impressive team nonetheless. One that we are still looking for our first win against in franchise history. Will be interesting to see though if their leading scorer Cameron Mitchell is on the team. I do know last season, and it looks like this season again, he is going to play in Mexico. So he is going to be playing in Mexico again for the same team, and I not sure if he'll be back in the ABA this season because of that, or if he will be going down to Mexico for that league here. That's what wound up happening last season when it came around playoff time. So, um, we might have a little bit of an easier matchup if that is the case, but still a very competitive team nonetheless. Also in the top 25 rankings, we see another team in our division at number 23, the Windy City Inferno, a team that is currently number 2 in our division. And when we look at the division standings, we will see they have pretty much locked up that number 2 seed as well. So let's jump back over and take a look at the games around our division. Really, there was not much going on around our division this weekend. Um, a few games there for the Chicago Fury. And we see, yeah, for whatever reason, that game did not properly get put on there, but it was 118-110. But we see the Chicago Fury also played on Sunday with a 142-119 victory over the Grizzlies. And then on Saturday, they also had a 136-94 victory over the Stone Mountain Strong Steppers. The 402 Elite defeated the Windy City Inferno 130 to 118. And it looks like that game between the Southland Saints and Wisconsin Frost did get canceled. And then obviously that game against the Midwest Monsters, that will not be happening. But if we look at the rest of the season here, there's really not many games left. Again, the Monsters aren't going to be playing that game, so the game against the Frost is off the table. The game we've got on Saturday against the Kings, that's still on as planned. We got the game on Sunday too against the Aces. It's not reflected on here yet. But then the Saints will also be playing the Lions on Sunday. And that is pretty much it as far as the division goes with games. The rest of those games further are not going to be happening. So that is really it. I mean, we've got the games, yeah, quite literally this weekend, and that is going to be it for the regular season. Then we'll be looking at the play-ins and play-offs. But that is it's coming to an end here for season two, regular season in the ABA for the Hoosier State Instigators. Definitely, it's been an impressive season compared to last season. We had our first winning record. We've been teetering right around that 500 mark, and we have defeated a few different top-ranked opponents, still in that power rankings, multiple top 10 teams, and shown that we have the ability to compete with the very best teams in the league. Something we showed last season in flashes. Again, we still do it sometimes in flashes here, but able to at least close out a few of those games this year, this season, to get that to get those couple of victories against the top ranked teams, top 10 ranked teams in the ABA for this season, including being undefeated. Actually, before I say that, let me see where Maysville is. Kentucky. Maysville's Kentucky, yes. So we are still undefeated against the Indiana-based teams. So hopefully we can continue to play some more Indiana-based teams in our play this season and in the future. But for this year, we do have bragging rights for the state of Indiana, which is the Hoosier State. But taking a look at the rankings or standings, I should say, since we just looked at the rankings, the standings in the division and then around the league here, we'll have a good idea of what is going to be our playoff picture. So looking at our division here, the first division, the Central Region Black Division, it looks like they updated the page here because it used to have that plus minus point differential. That was the tiebreaker. Now it seems to be showing division. So I don't know if they changed how that gets displayed or what. It also doesn't show number of games behind, which makes it a little bit more difficult just offhand saying how many games behind each team is. But at least in our division, it is a little bit easier because it's pretty much set at this point. If you do look at that, so Fury locked themselves in that number one spot. The Inferno are pretty solidly set in the number two seed. I don't see any way that they lose that two seed. Even if the Saints do secure another victory, that would put them at 9-4, which I think still would be behind the Inferno. Then we see ourselves. It shows 7-7. We are actually 7-8, and that would put us. Again, we're going to be most likely solid in that number four slot. Then we got the Wisconsin Frost at number 5, at 4-7. and pretty much all of those are going to be most likely the final standings as far as the division standings go within our division. So what that means would be we will have a play-in game against the Wisconsin Frost. Assuming we hold on to that number 4 seed, it would be a home game for us, and I believe it's actually going to be the weekend of March 1st. So next weekend, actually, that would be when the game would be on schedule for. If everything goes according to the schedule, I believe we are running off of around the league. But that is what we were likely facing off against. Again, there's a possibility maybe something else changes, but that pretty much locks us into that 4 seed, um, and that would also mean then the top 3 teams would get themselves into the playoffs. Fury will play the winner of our matchup, which would be between obviously us, the Instigators, and the Frost. And then the Inferno and the Saints would match up that first weekend of playoffs, the divisional round. That is on pace for the following weekend, so the 8th and the 9th. Then it would be subsequently after those games, the winners of each play each other, and then wins the division. Right now, though, like I said, the Fury are definitely going to be the favorite, not only in our division, but I think around the league to repeat this season. But we take a look at some other divisions here. Columbus Wizards up in the top of their division, the blue division, at 7-4, 2 games ahead of the Steel City Yellow Jackets. Say they've probably got themselves that number 1 seed. Again, unless something happens outside of the norm. But that is a strong team that we've played a few times this season, the Columbus Wizards, one that has been able to get the better end of us a few times this season, and a team we know is going to be tough if we have a matchup against in the playoffs. Red division, we've got the Indiana Lions out in front there at 18-5. They're pretty much locked up that number 1 seed. Also got a lot of games played on the schedule for the Lions this season. Then we've got the Aces, who will be playing on Sunday, and the Kings, we will be playing tomorrow, just behind them. Both teams, respectively, with 3 losses, 12 wins, though, for the Aces and 7 wins for the Kings. Maysville Miners at number 4, just behind them. The team that we just lost to this past weekend, Indiana Legends, a team that has improved this season to a 4-10 record currently. One that we have seen definitely some steps forward compared to last season's matchups that we've had. And then the Louisville Pros round out the red division, the division that we were a part of last season. So that will be that one. And then over in the white division, the final division in the central region, we have the 402 Elite at 9-2. And they've got a pretty solid lead in that division over the other teams there. So they are going to likely they will be the number 1 seed there, but that will lead for some interesting matchups as we break through the division round and go into the regional rounds of the central region. Obviously, the Fury, a very talented team, number 1 team in the nation. Wizards, we've seen a very talented team as well. Lions, obviously, always a threat. Aces as well. Kings is it's going to obviously depend on how many other players are going to be available, and if Cam Mitchell, their top leading scorer, and one of the best scorers in the league, is going to be available for the playoff run. Then we got the 402 Elite, a team that we've seen, just recently defeat the number 2 seed in our division. Taking a look over in the East, we've got the Black Division there. Looks like a tie up there for the top speed between Jersey Express and New York Hoop Dragons. So they've got to get that figured out here in the last few games. But then we've got the Blue Division, the New Hampshire Kings up top there with an 11-5 record. Then we've got a lot of teams there in that division, very competitive though. 8-2, the Massachusetts Wolves, and then tied for 8-5, we got the Lightning and the 413 Elite. And we'll touch on something in that division here in just a minute. But they did have an announcement from the league in regards to a game from this past weekend. Um, then we take a look at the red division, tied at the top there. We've got the Central PA Kings and Philly Thunder, both at 10-4. So it'll be interesting. Again, that's another one that's going to come down to the wire to see who wins that division. Then we've got in the white division, Buffalo Extreme, again, a team that I think is going to be one of the most competitive teams, especially in the playoffs, at 16-1, with Binghamton Bulldogs just behind them at 12-1. Binghamton was the team able to knock out the Extreme last season, so we'll see if that's something they're able to repeat this year. And I believe they also were the team that represented the East. Looking down in the south, we've got the Gulf Coast Gladiators at the top of the Black Division at 16-1. Pretty much got themselves locked in that number one seed. Mississippi Silverbacks, though, on a crazy run there to end the season. Jumped themselves up from a losing record to a winning record, currently at 12-7. Team that we know is definitely capable of making a late season run as they push their way into the championship weekend last season and was able to actually, yeah, I think they were the team that was in the championship that lost to the Fury. So a team that is definitely capable of getting back. They jumped themselves back in the power rankings as well, but they have definitely been on a strong second half of the season for the Silverbacks. Then in the blue division, it does still show the Bats are undefeated, which is a little confusing when it comes to that power rankings, how they would drop to number 11 behind a few, actually, yeah, behind mostly teams that have a loss or two. Um, but it looks like that is accurate. So Austin Bats still undefeated at 15-0, but they did find themselves falling in the power rankings to the number 11 spot. Then we've got the Alamo City All Stars behind them with a solid record of 11-4, and a few more teams there with winning records in the Blue Division. But the Bats are Bats are going to lock up that number one seed. Taking a look down in the Red Division, we've got a very competitive top of that division. Columbus Skyhawks 15-2, Atlanta Aliens just behind them by a half game at 15-3. Also got the Pythons at 12-5, and then the Strike at 11-3. So impressive records from all of those teams. I say that's another division that is still going to be up for grabs here in the final weekend or weekends of ABA play, regular season, I should say. But the South White Division, we take a look, and again, that's going to be a competitive run there at the end with the County Royals at 15-3, currently in the lead. But the Kissimmee Lambs at 14-1. Feel like that should be above the Royals, but I don't know. Apparently, it shows the Royals above them, but I think that should actually be the Lambs as far as that record goes. But that will still be a division up for grabs there in this the end of the season. Taking a look out west, we've got the Empire Hounds. at 14-1. Legends there, 13-2. So that's still a division up for grabs here. Then we got the Blue division. That one is pretty solidly set. Number one seed is going to be your Tucson Buckets at 12-2 currently. Taking a look over in the red division, we've got the Silicon Valley Panthers, again, another top team that we've seen throughout this season, and a team that was one of the top teams last season as well, making it to the Final Four last year at 15-0, still undefeated, one of the three remaining undefeated teams, but they've locked themselves in that number one spot. Um, then we look at the white division, and that one is still going to be up for grabs there with the San Jose Wolfpack, currently at 7-7, and the San Francisco City Cats just behind them at 6-7. That is the one division. It looks like they could wind up with the winner of the division having a 500 or worse record. The rest of the divisions will, I believe, are going to be guaranteed to have a winning record as their division winner, but that is the one outlier. The at-large teams, some teams that have folded throughout the season, and also some teams that are competing as exhibition teams, fill-in teams, and whatnot. But we see that. And let's see. I know our local guys, the Indiana Shuckers. I don't know. It looks like they currently at 0-5. Um, but hopefully you get to see them come back here next year and get some more games under their belts. But that's what we've got here in the divisions and standings. So realistically, like I said, that's going to put us in. We've got these two final games. So we got the game against the Kings and the Aces. Obviously, it's a little bit more uh, fluid in their situation, even though it's not really. Not really. It's pretty much going to be set in those spots there, with the 2 and the 3 seed in their division. But we still, have the opportunity to finish out the season with a winning record. First time we could possibly do that. So a lot on the line for that. Um, but then we've got the matchups for the play in and play off. Essentially set. Obviously there's still some final things that could shake out maybe a little bit differently. Um, if the Saints add a couple of games and they're able to jump up to that 2 seed, something of that nature. Um, or if the Frost wind up adding some games, but they're going to need a decent number of games, and there's a lot of things. But most likely, this is going to be the matchups is going to be Frost at Instigators next weekend. Again, that's the most likely scenario, and then the following weekend would then be the Inferno and the Saints matchup, and then the winner of our matchup, the 4 and the 5 seed against the Chicago Fury. That is what we're looking at, and the very real likelihood here as we get to the end of the regular season, get ourselves just into that play-in game again, and then hopefully we can get ourselves into the playoffs. So last season, if you guys do remember, we were in the play-ins, and we matched up against the Legends in that first matchup. Then we played against the, now that I think about it, a team that I have not seen, and I don't think they exist anymore. But the Phoenix were the team that knocked us out of the playoffs or play-ins last season. Um, so we had that first round victory in the play-in tournament, but we were not able to secure a victory in the second round. So that's ultimately what led to the end of the first ever Hoosier State Instigator season and playoff run. But that is something we look to do a little bit differently this season. Obviously we just have the one play-in game. Again, that's the most likely scenario, and then we would be able to make it to the playoffs if we do get that first win. But we'll be having a difficult challenge right off the bat if that's the case, as we would then match up against the Chicago Fury, defending champions, number one team in the country and still undefeated. But a team that we have faced off against a few times, and we've only lost by 10 points in both of those games. So a team we can definitely compete against, and one that if we are able to pull everything together, I think we've got a chance to defeat. But we have to get through this weekend here first, finish off the season on a good note, and hopefully we can continue to carry that over into the play-ins and playoffs, and get ourselves on a run here to end things. And momentum, I think, is always going to be one of the biggest keys when it comes to um, playoffs, and especially basketball. We've got, when you watch March Madness games, you got upsets, but it's that momentum a lot of times that's going to carry some of these teams maybe a little further than expected. Um, and ultimately, it's a game of runs when it comes down to it. So momentum is a huge thing in basketball. So you got that opportunity to finish things out strong here. Hopefully, you get that first winning record, first winning season to wrap out season two. And hopefully, we can continue to grow on the improvements we've had so far this season. Again, we've got some guys that have been a little bit newer to the roster that are still getting a little bit, uh, you know, uh, caught up with the team and everybody getting used to each other. Guys like Hardiman and Miro, and then we've got obviously some guys coming back from injuries such as like Chuck and Brandon. And we're finally getting ourselves assembled, but it is towards the end of the season, so you got to get that figured out here in the next few weeks. Actually, hopefully this week, and then we can have it all figured out when we get into the play-ins and playoffs. But that is the reality that we are looking at. Crazy to think we are here, just about at the end of the regular season for season two of the Hoosier State Instigators in the ABA. But that is what we're looking at. And then I mentioned we are gonna discuss the which division was that? Blue Division in the East region. The ABA did put out a statement recently from CEO Joe Newman. I guess there was an altercation at that matchup between the 413 Elite and New Hampshire Kings. And obviously, that type of action is not supported by the league, and nobody in the league wants to see that stuff happen. But it looks like a New Hampshire player punched a 413 player unprovoked, and that led to melee of sorts. And obviously that's not something anybody wants to happen, and something the league made a very strong stance on, that it is a no tolerance policy when it comes to that. The player has been suspended indefinitely, and actually permanently. Permanently is the word they use, not indefinitely. So very strong stand on that. That's not something that is welcome in the ABA. I mean, that's a pretty obvious as far as that goes. But with that statement there, obviously that doubles down on it. But why I share that, obviously this is not something anybody wants to deal with when it comes to that type of stuff. But I do think that also makes it um, interesting when you look at that division when it comes to playoff times, because you're gonna have to keep in mind these teams there's a chance they're gonna be facing each other here again, just in a short amount of time because of that, the way things will shake out. But if we look at, oh, where did that go? Yeah, there you go. And if we look at that, you see there the Kings there leading the division, and then the 413 Elite currently at 8-5. So like I said, there is a real chance those two teams wind up facing against each other again. But obviously it's been precedent set when it comes to that. So I don't anticipate anything further happening in those matchups. If that were to happen, where they face each other in the playoffs. But just something I figured we'd share that was posted around the league. Give you a little bit more insight in case you hadn't seen that. And let's jump back to this. And we've got, again, that game. So we had that matchup last week against the Miners. Then we got the games tomorrow and Sunday. Tomorrow against the Kings. We'll be on the road in Cincinnati. Then we'll travel to Nashville the very next day to take on the Aces to wrap up our season 2 of the ABA for the Hoosier State Instigators. Games will be streaming live, as far as I know, over on Patreon. So if you're not a member of the Patreon, join now. Catch the last few games here of the regular season. And that is available again, streaming live for anybody at a dollar tier or higher. You get access to those live games. And then, obviously you got higher tiers along the lines of that. Things such as the fan voter tier, $10 or higher, where you get to make important decisions, not only for your Hoosier State Instigators, but for the whole entire Apex Athletic Collective. And that extends more than just during the season, also a lot of off-season votes. One thing that we had implemented earlier this season, we haven't been able to do it quite often and quite recently, due to injuries and player availabilities, was the fans man vote. That was again where we let fans decide the final active roster spot for the Hoosier State Instigators week to week, for that, from some of their players. But that is, something we'd like to bring back here in the future. Just have not been able to do it because of player availability, injuries, and other things going on in the team. So that is, how things have shaken out this year. We'll do a recap of the season, a regular season next week. Take a look at the playoff matchups, but like I said, we'll most likely next weekend we are going to be seeing a matchup, between your Instigators and the Frost. Likely it's going to be a home game for the Instigators, but that is, again, probably what we'll see next weekend, regardless of the outcomes of these matchups here against the Kings and the Aces. Um, but still bragging rights on the line, respect on the line as well, and an opportunity to get our first victory against the Kings, and then to secure a second victory against the Aces in the games this weekend. It's also our first doubleheader road trip, as far as I remember. So a cool way to end the regular season here. But a fun second season. Definitely, I think we've made some improvements on the team. And hopefully we continue to do that and build some momentum going into the play-ins and the playoffs here. But that is going to do it for tonight's episode. Thank you as always for joining me. Again, we'll be back here Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, live on Twitch as well as over on Patreon, and we'll be over on YouTube too as well. And it gets uploaded there on YouTube a few days later as well. But thank you for joining us again. Catch us live tomorrow over on a Patreon. If you're not already on that, you join at patreon.com/Apex Athletic Collective, and become a member and stream our final regular season games live. But until then, until the end of the regular season, be great and instigate.